Yeah, so what we're going to do today is we're just going to continue on. We want to get to year 34. So we're going to start at year 29 and just work through. We'll skip year 30, and it's the same old thing. We're just looking at all of the counting for up to Passover in these different calendars. Now, some people might say, you know what, I don't want to sit through all of this. And it would sure be a lot easier just to say, you know what, everybody, we checked all these years and there's nothing there. Um, but people often don't know how to count it out. So that's why we're counting out every single calendar so that they can see this is how you do it. And this is
Mhm.
why this calendar doesn't work with a 12-hour offset with the Covenant calendar. So it's a little bit laborious, but the proof is there. So, and it does help people to know how to count because a lot of them don't know. So with that, we're just going to dive into year 29. And I think it's only about 40 slides, so it won't be as long today. We're just going to have
Mhm.
fun with it.
Excellent. Welcome back to the study of the calendar. We got some information for you, and as Charlene said, it won't be quite as long as yesterday. But it's going to follow the same pattern that we did yesterday. That pattern, I hope you recognize it, and I hope it's easy for you to follow. So, welcome back. Yahusha's crucifixion year. Again, what year was it? Will Common Era 29 show a midst of the week crucifixion? And if not, perhaps would it be in Common Era 31 to 34? And will there be a lunar 12-hour offset to Yahuwah's covenant calendar? That's a major question. This is the detailed edition, and this is part 2 of 6. So next up here, we have Common Era 29. Yeah, it's going to be the same exercise. And the following slides, we're going to be looking for the lunar Passover of the Yahudim. And ultimately, the 12-hour festal offset for scriptural alignment. So in covenant calendar of the year 29, we're going to be looking for the crucifixion on a 4th cycle. So here again, as the pattern from the last study, here is the shadow of the Teshuvah, or the equinox in English, in this blue square. The 23rd is New Year Day, and this is the first day of the count to Abib 14. So on these green lines is our 14-day count. And we go through these green line numbers, and it comes to a 3rd cycle, or a Tuesday in pagan terms. And this is where the covenant calendar Passover would have been on this year. Again, this is the pattern that we have followed, and that we will continue. So let's look more here. There's no 4th cycle crucifixion, not on this year. And again, we've heard this question, that the day of the Teshuvah shadow, or the day of the equinox, is the first day of the year. That's what we have been told many times. So the question, is it? Note here, if March 22 Teshuvah shadow was the New Year day, the covenant calendar Abib 14 would have been on April 4th, a 2nd cycle. Again, there's no midst of the week crucifixion in this year, so that removes it. That removes this scenario for the year of the crucifixion. Continuing on here, there is our shadow of the Teshuvah again. This is going to be the first lunar view, and it will be the sliver before the Teshuvah. Here is our black dot indicating the conjunction. We project that up to this black square here on the 4th. That's the conjunction. We count 2 sunsets, and after that 2nd sunset, we can spot a sliver moon that comes on the 6th. And the next day is counted as New Moonth Day. From New Moonth Day, there are 14 cycles to the 20th, the lunar Passover, on the 1st cycle. The 1st is not the 4th cycle. But look here, The lunar Passover would have been before the Teshuvah shadow event, and long before Abib 14 of the Covenant calendar. So what would happen if the next crescent moon was chosen after the Teshuvah? Let's have a look at it. Again, the second lunar view. This is the sliver spotted after the Teshuvah. Here's our shadow of Teshuvah, or the equinox. So we look for the conjunction after the equinox. Here it is, the black dot projected up here on the second. That's our conjunction. Count out about 2 sunsets, and after that is our sliver moon. The next day is new moon's day, and here, from new moon's day, there are 14 cycles to the 18th, the second cycle of the week. No midst of the week crucifixion here. And the problem is, a lunar Passover on the 18th, a second cycle, is long after the Covenant calendar Pesach. It was on April 5th, the third cycle, in the first week of the same Gregorian month. Quite a distance away. No fourth cycle mark, no possibility of aligning the 12-hour festal offset as spoken into by John 19:42 and Matthew in chapter 26, verse 5. What about Enoch and Zadok's Jerusalem Equilux view, the Bacchanalia festival? The equilux is on the 17th of the month. We see that there, the 17th. The new lux month would have been on the 18th. And we count out 14 days. So the Enoch-Zadok equilux, Abib 14, is on the 5th cycle of the week. Problems are, it's far too early to secure Scripture's 12-hour offset with the Covenant calendar. And it is most certainly not possible with the lunar calendar of the Jews either. Again, a double equilux failure. What about Enoch and Zadok's most popular 364-day calendar count? Well, let's have a look at it. And we see the shadow of Teshuvah on the 22nd. The next day would be Yahuwah's New Year cycle on the 23rd. Interestingly, in this year, Enoch and Zadok's New Year cycle was on the same day, on the 4th cycle of the week, as they claim. So we do the count, the 14-day count to their Abib 14, and we have the 3rd cycle of the week where it lands on. Here's a huge problem here. It's not a midst of the week. Also, it is most certainly not possible to align with the Scripture's 12-hour offset documentation of the Jews' lunar calendar and their actions. Here in Common Era 29 is a failure for the Enoch and Zadok calendar count. So let's move on. How about Common Era 30? Is it going to be the same exercise? And is it going to be the same results? But let's look at Common Era 31 to 34 first. Let's clear that and get them out of the way. And then we're going to severely concentrate on Common Era 30. But for right now, let's check out Common Era 31 first. It'll be the same exercise. Will these years from Common Era 31 to 34 reveal alignment? And what about the 12-hour festal offset? What about the scripturally documented double Passover within 12 hours? Are we going to see that? 31 chart. Here is the shadow of Teshuvah, or the equinox in English, and we do our green line number count, 14 days to Passover. That lands us on a 6th cycle. Interesting. That could be a Friday crucifixion if you want to ignore other factors. But let's go look. What about the Teshuvah as the day of the new year? What about that? If the March 23 Teshuvah shadow was the New Year day, the Covenant calendar Abib 14 would have been on April 5th, a fifth cycle. Again, no chance of finding Yahusha's midst of the week crucifixion, but we will continue with the lunar search. And this comment I have over here on the left, would this be the popular Friday crucifixion? Please notice the spelling I have in here, because a Friday crucifixion never happened. But in common...
Tim,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. There is a scratching again on your microphone, like yesterday.
Okay.
Just pause.
Yeah, you fixed it. You fixed it. Yeah, no, it's fine. You fixed it. You can continue. Sorry.
Mhm.
It's fine now. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Let's move on. Let's move on to the next slide here. The first lunar view, Common Era 31, and this is before Teshuvah. Our Teshuvah shadow is on the 23rd in this chart. The conjunction in the black dot is right here. We project it up to the 12th. 2 sunsets later, we spot the sliver moon. And the next day is the new moon's day. From there we count 14 days to the gold box on the 28th. From new moon's day, there are 14 cycles to the 28th, the lunar Passover, on a fourth cycle. That's interesting. It is the fourth cycle. But that starts at sunset on the third cycle, the evening before. Again, no scriptural alignment. If one discards the lunar sunset tradition, it could be claimed as a fourth cycle crucifixion date. But see how close the lunar Passover was to the Teshuvah shadow. It's only 5 cycles away. Yahusha's covenant calendar Passover was 9 more cycles in the future. There is certainly no possibility of the 12-hour festal offset as documented by John or Matthew, not in Common Era 31. Doesn't exist here. What about the next scenario for 31? This is a second lunar view, and it's after the equinox again. There's our shadow of Teshuvah, turning of the celestial bodies. Just note up here, the covenant calendar Passover is on a 6th cycle on a Friday in this scenario. Keep that in mind. So we go to the left side of the screen and we see the conjunction after the equinox. And we project it up to here on the 10th. There's our conjunction. 2 sunsets later, after the sunset, is a sliver moon on the 12th. And the next day is new moon's day. Do our 14-day count to the lunar Passover, or the lunar Abib 14. And we see it arrives on the 26th of that month. It's on the 5th cycle, and that starts at sunset on the 4th cycle, the evening before. We need to recall that the covenant calendar Pesach was on a 6th cycle, so there's not even any chance of finding a 12-hour offset. No scriptural alignment here. Using the lunar Passover after the Teshuvah shadow moves the lunar Passover almost 3 weeks later. There is absolutely no possibility of the 12-hour festal offset as documented by John or Matthew in Common Era 31. Let's look at some more. We need to check all these calendars out. How about the Enoch and Zadok's Jerusalem Equilux view? Yes, this is the Equilux festival for Bacchanalia. Here it is on the 17th in the black box. It's before the Teshuvah. On the 18th would be New Lux month day. And we do the count, comes out to the 31st 14-day count comes out to the 31st in the gold box. It's on a 7th cycle of the week. And there's more problems. They don't seem to stop. It is far too early to secure Scripture's 12-hour offset with the Covenant calendar, and most certainly not possible with the lunar calendar of the Jews either. Again, this is another double equilux failure. Okay, we need to find the next one. Enoch and Zadok's most popular 364 cycle calendar count. Let's have a look at this one. Here's the shadow of Teshuvah. March 24, Covenant calendar, is Yahusha's New Year cycle on the 24th. Enoch and Zadok's New Year day is on the first fourth cycle after the equinox. That's by their stipulation. That comes in on the 28th, right here. Enoch and Zadok's New Year day in this year. So we do the 14-day count, and that comes to the 10th of April on the Gregorian calendar. This would be Enoch and Zadok's Abib 14, and the requirement is it must be on a third cycle Passover. That's their requirement. But it's a distance away from the 14th on the 6th cycle of Covenant calendar. There's no possibility of a 12-hour offset. Can't happen. And it can't even come close to the lunar calendar of the Yahudim either. So in this scenario, there's a complete failure for scriptural alignment. What about those orange? These 4 cycles after the shadow require your attention. Yahuwah claims through the scripture examples that this is the last day of the year, and the 4th would have been Yahuwah's first day of the new year. Yet Enoch and Zadok, because of their of their calendar requirements, they say that on the 28th, the midst of the week, would have been the New Year day. So our dilemma is these 4 orange circles. What do we do with those days? Are these the last days of the year, according to Enoch? Or are these the beginning days of the year, according to Yahuwah? That's for you to decide. I can't tell you what to do. Next up, Common Era 32. Here we are with the shadow of Teshuvah on the 22nd, right here. The green line count brings us over to Abib 14 on Covenant calendar. That would have been on the 7th day Shabbat on this year. And that would be much like with a year that Joshua went into Canaan. But what about the Teshuvah sign as the New Year day? What about that? If the March 22nd Teshuvah was the New Year day, the Covenant calendar Abib 14 would have been on April 4th, a 6th cycle. Well, Yahusha wasn't crucified on a 6th cycle. So again, there's no chance of finding a midst of the week crucifixion in this scenario. Going to the lunar calendar, the first view, which is the sliver before Teshuvah in the year of 32. Here's our shadow of Teshuvah in the blue square. The conjunction is marked out here on the black with the black dot. This is the conjunction before the Teshuvah or before the equinox. It's on the 29th. The sliver moon would be spotted 2 sunsets later, or after 2 sunsets. Sliver moon on the 2nd, and on the 3rd would be new moonth day. We count out 14 days from new moonth day, lands us on the 16th of the Gregorian March calendar. From new moonth day, 14 cycles brings the lunar Abib 14 to the first cycle of the week, and it's well before the Teshuvah. So that's not even possible for scriptural alignment. Just not even possible. It's that simple. Moving forward, what about the lunar view with the sliver after the Teshuvah? Again, here's the shadow day, the day of the equinox, and we're looking for the conjunction after the equinox. Here's the conjunction on the 30th. We know this by the black dot here. We count out 2 sunsets, and after the sunset is our spotting of the sliver moon. It's on the 1st. Next day is new moonth day. From new moonth day, we count 14 cycles to the lunar Abib 14 on a 3rd cycle. A 3rd cycle is not a midst of the week. It can't happen. And it's a distance away from covenant calendar Pesach. There is certainly no possibility of fulfilling Scripture's midst of the week crucifixion and also the 12-hour festal offset as mentioned in John 19:42 and Matthew 26:5. Covenant calendar Passover was 11 cycles earlier. Heavy sigh. Only years 33 and 34 in this lunar portion to go. Will we find the scriptures documenting the 4th cycle crucifixion and the 12-hour offset there? Are we going to find them? But first, let's cover the Enoch and Zadok equation for this year of 32. Enoch and Zadok equilux. Here is the 17th. This is the equilux. Next day is New Lux month day. Your 14-day count to the Abib 14 point, and it lands us on the 31st, and it's the 2nd cycle of the week. You already know the drill. It's not the midst of the week. It's far too early to secure Scripture's 12-hour offset with a covenant calendar, and most certainly not possible with the lunar calendar of the Jews either. Does it surprise you? This is another double equilux failure. Again, we're going to look at Enoch and Zadok's most popular 364-day calendar count, the shadow of the Teshuvah on the 22nd. Enoch and Zadok demand a 4th cycle New Year day. Here it is after the Teshuvah, 4th cycle New Year day. Covenant calendar Pesach is way over here. But let's do the 14-day count. From here, for Enoch and Zadok, you do your 14-day count to Abib 14. That brings us to the 3rd cycle of the week on the 8th over here. Quite a distance away from covenant calendar Pesach. 12-hour offset? Not even close. But it must be asked, how is it that the scripture is glaringly precise about the 4th cycle midst of the week crucifixion, yet Enoch and Zadok demand a Tuesday Passover or a 3rd cycle Passover every year, and then they still claim to be scriptural? And what about Scripture's many examples of Passover on the other cycles of the week? What do we do with that? What does Enoch and Zadok have to answer to that? Here again are these controversial orange circles. These 3 cycles after the shadow, they require your attention. To whom do you deliver allegiance? Is it to Yahuwah? Or is it to the Dead Sea Scroll system? What do you do with those dates? Are they the end of the year, or are they the beginning of the year? To whom do you give allegiance? Next up, Common Error 33. Same exercise. Yeah, we'll get through this. Don't get weary yet. We'll be done shortly. Calendar year 33. Here is the shadow of Teshuvah. On the 22nd, see, even the naval chart says so, right over here on the top right-hand corner, March 22. So we do the count, your green line count to Abib 14, Covenant calendar. Covenant calendar lands us on the first cycle of the week. That's a Sunday. In pagan terms, Yahusha did not die on a first cycle of the week. But let's continue. What if the Teshuvah sign as the New Year day is in effect? Well, if the March 22 Teshuvah shadow was the New Year's Day, the covenant calendar Abib 14 would have been on April 4th, a seventh-day Shabbat. Common Era 33. There's no chance of finding a midst-of-the-week crucifixion. On the lunar calendar in the same year, we're going to be looking for the sliver before the Teshuvah. Once more, the Teshuvah is on the 22nd. Black dot conjunction projected up here into the black box is on the 19th. 2 sunsets later, after that sunset, you find a sliver moon, and the next day is New Moonth Day. Interesting. New Moonth Day is the last day of the year on Covenant calendar. So we do our count from New Moonth Day on the lunar calendar, and that brings us to the 4th of April on the Gregorian month. From New Moonth Day, there are 14 cycles to the lunar Abib 14th, the 7th cycle. Well, it can't align. It cannot give us scriptural alignment. Common Era 33, the lunar dating will not support a 4th cycle festal action, and a Daniel 9:27 midst of the week prophecy could not be fulfilled here. Neither the Matthew 27:5 nor John 19:42 find alignment here. There is no 12-hour offset available in this scenario. What about the equilux? Maybe the equilux pattern has got it here. The shadow of Teshuvah, 22nd. Equilux on the 17th, as in every year. Here's your new Lux month day, according to that system. 14-day count for the Lux system brings us to the 31st down here in the gold box. Enoch and Zadok equilux, Abib 14, is on the 3rd cycle of the week. The problems are, it's far too early to secure Scripture's 12-hour offset with the covenant calendar. And I think you guys are going to be tired of hearing me say that, but it has to be stated every time because we need to be sure of what we're talking about. What about this black arrow here? Neither is the equilux option capable of producing the Scripture's 12-hour offset with the Jews' lunar Passover. Yet again, we see another double equilux failure. Well, let's go to Enoch and Zadok's 364 count. Maybe it's got answers for us. Here's the shadow of the Teshuvah on the year 33. Next day is Yahuwah's covenanted New Year cycle. Enoch and Zadok have their 4th cycle New Year day on the 25th, right here in the black box. That's under their demand. What do we do with these 2 days in the orange circles? These 2 cycles after the shadow await your decision. And the question is, who controls your start of the year? You have that choice. You can say, I go by Enoch and Zadok, or you can say, I go by Scripture. But you can't have them both. It's one or the other. The fence cannot be walked. But let's look at it. The Enoch and Zadok 4th cycle New Year Day, we do the count to Abib 14 on their calendar, and this brings us to their stipulated 3rd cycle Passover every year. Do I need to say it? It's not a midst of the week, and there's no possibility of a 12-hour offset. Once again, we see an incredible difference between the Scripture and the Dead Sea Scroll calendars. Yet, we still have Common Era 34, and then, most important, Common Era 30 to examine. But we're going to go through Common Era 34 first, same exercise. This is the last year we're going to examine in this portion before we investigate year Common Era 30 on the next portion. So let's have a look at it. Common Era 34. Here's your shadow of Teshuvah. It's on the 22nd of this year, one more time. Your 14-day count on these green lines brings us over to Covenant Calendar Abib 14. It's on a second cycle of the week. No midst of the week crucifixion here. Can't happen. What about the Teshuvah Shadow Day as the New Year Day? Maybe that will change everything. Well, you look at it and it certainly doesn't change very much. Covenant Calendar Abib 14 would then have been on April 4th, a first cycle. No improvement in this scenario. Moving forward, the lunar before Teshuvah view. So we look at the conjunction here, the black dot projected up to the 9th up here. This is the conjunction before the Teshuvah in the blue box. This is the view, the first lunar view. 2 days or 2 sunsets after the conjunction. After that sunset, we see a sliver moon. This is where it's spotted. Next day, new moonth day. Do your 14-day count, and that brings us to the gold box on the 25th. Lunar Abib 14 is on a 5th cycle of the week. It would start on the 4th cycle at sunset. That's probably pretty interesting. Problem is, do I need to say it? It's way too early to be close to Scripture's 12-hour offset. Can't happen. If you want to ignore the words of the Scriptures and claim this, that's your choice. But we like to have full scriptural alignment. How about the second lunar view after the equinox? Here is the shadow of Teshuvah in the blue box, your 14-day count on the green lines. We bring that over to the month of April on the Gregorian calendar, and we see that Covenant Calendar Abib 14 would have been on the second cycle of the week. What about this lunar view? Here's your conjunction on the 7th in the black box up here. This is after the Teshuvah. 2 sunsets later, we spot a sliver moon, and the next day is new moonth day. Lunar Abib 14, when you do your count, Lunar Abib 14 is on a 6th cycle of the week. A Friday. It would start on the 5th cycle at sunset. Well, that kind of eliminates the crucifixion. Problem is, it's way too late to align with a 12-hour offset. Another failure to get scriptural alignment. What about the equilux? Maybe the equilux will have it. Here is the Enoch and Zadok Jerusalem equilux view. Shadow of Teshuvah, or the equinox again. On the 17th up here, before the Teshuvah, is the equilux. Here is the new Lux month day on the 18th, our 14-day count to the equilux Passover is on the 31st in the gold box. If Enoch and Zadok equilux Abib 14 is on a 4th cycle of the week, problems are it is way too early to find a covenant calendar 12-hour offset, and no 12-hour sync possible with the lunar system either. Cannot happen. Again, double equilux failure. Maybe you're getting tired of hearing that, but it's the fact. Enoch and Zadok's most popular 364 cycle calendar count. This could be interesting. Shadow of Teshuvah on the 22nd. Let's find out what Enoch declares and Zadok. Again, their New Year day on a fourth cycle of the week. This is what they stipulate in their calendar. Every year has to have a fourth cycle New Year day. So what is this circle here, this orange circle, the 23rd? Is this Yahuwah's New Year cycle, according to the examples written in Scripture? Or is it the last day of the year, according to Enoch and Zadok? It soon becomes very, very apparent that there is a serious controversy, a serious problem that needs to be reckoned. There is a difference. Enoch and Zadok's calendar have no connection to the Scripture. It is an entirely different calendar. But we do the 14-day count from the 24th here, and that brings us over to the Enoch and Zadok third cycle, Abib 14 Passover, right over here. This is after the covenant calendar, Abib 14 Passover. Yahushua was not crucified on either a second nor a third cycle of the week. Prophecy declares the crucifixion was the midst of the week. Scripture's Passion Week account verifies this with blinding precision. With that behind us, let's have a word summary here. This is the first word summary for 26 to 29 of the Common Era and 31 to 34 of the Common Era. A covenant calendar summary. Covenant calendar marks Passover 14 from the day following the Teshuvah, the shadow on the Teshuvah. It marks it 6 times on March 22nd, 2 times on March 23rd, placing Passover on either April 4th or the 5th each year. Does this not sound like an appointed time for the Moedim? Not one Passover in the 8 calendar years falls on a midst of the week, revealing a confirmation with Scripture's documented Abib 14 double Passover, which would reveal the 12-hour offset written in the Scripture. Not once have we found this in the years thus far. Therefore, not one of these years can qualify for Yahusha's final Passover. Do we understand the depth of this information? What about Common Era 30? We still have that to look at. Here's a second word summary for the years 26 to 29 and 31 to 34. The lunar Passover calculation before and after Teshuvah. Let's look at the summary. Before Teshuvah, there is a great spread of new moon day dates from March 7 to March 22nd. Passovers range from March 20th to April the 5th. What about the scripture that is written in Scripture? It says there, speaking of Yahuwah, with whom there is no variation. And Malachi says Yahuwah does not change. Yet here we see Passovers ranging from March 20th to April 5th. Does that seem like an appointment, or is that a scramble? Common Era 31 is 1 year where Passover begins at sunset, Wednesday, midst of the week. Interestingly enough, most feast camps teaching a Friday cross use Common Era 31 as the year of Yahusha's Passover, when indeed there is no way to find a lunar Friday Passover in Common Era 31. So how does that work? After Teshuvah, there is another great spread of new moon day dates from March 23rd to April 13th, with Passovers ranging from April 11th to April 28th. There's that massive variation again. Interestingly enough, there is one Wednesday Passover in Common Era 28, a very popular year. Third word summary for the very same years. The equilux Passover calculations. Equilux is always on March 17 and Passover is always on March 31st. Years Common Era 28 and 34 both had a Wednesday crucifixion, a Wednesday Passover. While the equilux calculation has the attributes of the same yearly appointed times for the Moedim, none of the calculations can satisfy the 12-hour offset found in the Gospel account. Shall we ignore that 12-hour offset, or shall we demand accountability? Charlene is going to help me with this chart here. Charlene?
So from those last 3 slides that we just looked at, we're just going to put everything onto this chart. Oh, hang on, Tim, just back that up a little bit to that first column. We're going to only look at 4 of the calendars, not all 5, because the popular 364-day calendar of Enoch Zadok always had Passover on a Tuesday, the 3rd cycle. So that doesn't even qualify. So we're not going to put that one on the chart. But the first one is for the Covenant calendar. And if you can just whiz down, you can see there was not one year that had a Wednesday Passover, not one single year in all of these summaries that we looked at. Let's bring up the next table. The next table is for the lunar calendar calculation that was before the Teshuvah or the equinox. And as you run down, you can see in year 28, there was a Wednesday. Oh, but it's March 31. It's pretty early. You'll also see in year 31, there is also another Wednesday Passover. But again, the date is March 28th. And we're going to compare this with some other columns here in a little bit. Let's look at the next column. The next column is for the lunar calculations that are after the Teshuvah or after the equinox. And again, in Common Era 28, Wednesday, there is a Wednesday Passover, and it's on April the 28th. This is a really popular year for the lunar calendar. This is the one that is very popular out there right now. You can also see in year 33, there is a Passover on a Sabbath. We're going to talk about that as well in just a moment. At the very, very bottom, before we go on to that blue box, the very bottom, in calendar year 34, there is a Friday Passover. Okay, that's according to the lunar calculation after the Teshuvah, but that's in year 34. It's a little bit late. Okay, let's go to the next column, or the blue box is what we want to look at here next. We have 3 Passovers in a row here between Covenant calendar and the 2 lunar calculations before and after the Teshuvah. And look at this. There's one on a Sunday, and then the lunar calendars both have Sabbath. So there could be a 12-hour offset here, except for we know that Yahusha has to have his Passover day on the midst of the week. So that doesn't work. Then this is the column for the equilux calculations of using the equilux, okay? And did you notice that every single calendar had exactly the same dates? They had the 17th for the equilux day, the 18th for the new day of the year, and March 31 was always Passover. So that was something consistent in that equilux calculation. But year 28 does have a Wednesday. It's just on March 31. And also year 34 does have a Wednesday Passover. But again, March 31. You can see March 31 all the way down. Now there's one more red box. This is an interesting comparison because in year 28, look at this. We have Wednesday Passovers on these 3 calendars. The lunar calculation before Teshuvah, the one after, and also the equilux comparison. But the years are different. I mean, the dates of the month are different. March 31 as compared to April 28th, and then, of course, another March 31. So there's 3 Wednesday there, but when you look over on the Covenant calendar side, it's a Monday. So there's no way to have a 12-hour Passover there, 12-hour offset there. So we were just looking at all these years. There is nothing there at all that works. We've counted out all of those years for all of those calendars, and we couldn't find a single thing. I think that's good. We can go to the next slide as we finish up.
Out of every calculation, not one year could produce the 12-hour offset with the Jews' lunar calendar amidst of the week. Not one. From years 26 to 29 and 31 to 34, not one year has accomplished scriptural alignment. What about year 30? What about that? We're going to be looking at that very, very carefully in great detail. This is the end for this session. It will be continued where a very careful and detailed examination will be given to Common Era 30. Yahuwah marks the sands of time. If you have questions and comments, they can be sent to questions@studythecalendar.com. And there's the address for our website. Your time is precious, and I appreciate very much you spending time with us. Thank you for allowing us to share. And I say shalom to you and your family. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Maria.
That was very fast. That
Yeah.
was short. I'm not used to short presentations.
We have some longer ones coming up, believe me.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't have any questions concerning this presentation. It was pretty straightforward, easy to understand and follow. I have a general question, which I should have asked earlier, but I haven't. So I'm going to ask it now. Why the equinox is before the equinox? It's physically, I don't, by the laws of physics, I cannot understand why equal day and night proceeds the straight shadow line.
Yes, and we do have a teaching on the deception of the equinox. In some areas of the world, what you'll find is it's an equal sunset, or sorry, let's start with sunrise, an equal sunrise time to an equal sunset time. So just as an example, 6:30 is sunrise, 6:30 is sunset. So it goes by that. You will not have that happening on the equinox day because it doesn't work that way. Okay, they want an equal day, but equal lux meaning light, means equal light, but nox is night, so equal night. So basically a little bit of difference. But if you just go and check, and it's very easy to do on the internet, different sunrise sunset times, all the way from way up north of the pole in Inuvik, all the way down to New Zealand. I checked about 13 or 14 different places in the world. Those places don't all have equal sunrise and sunset on equilux. There's only a few places in the world that does. But this particular ministry that promotes this happened to be in a place in the United States that has exactly 6:30 sunrise, 6:30 sunset. But it doesn't happen all over the world. And they feel that Rome has paganized the equinox, the Teshuvah, because Rome has done a lot of things around that dating, but Rome can't paganize anything that Yahuwah puts in the sky. So again, the equinox is the only day that you will have that straight line shadow. If you're marking that straight line shadow, you will have a straight line on that day 2 times a year. But on the equilux in the spring, you will still have a curve. Okay. So
Will we have a straight line, shadow line, even in the North Pole and South Pole?
Yes, all over the world. Everybody within 24 to 36 hours as the sun travels, from these man-made international date lines all the way through, everyone in the world, if they were marking the shadow, they would all see the straight line on within that 24 to 36 hour window. On the equinox, there'll be a curve for everybody. We've been marking the shadow this year quite diligently, and we've been seeing these curves, and we've actually observed the curve straightening out to a shadow this year, September. So that is Yah's marker in the heavens.
Yeah.
He put that there. That's his sign for us to observe what's happening on the ground. We don't need to be looking at the sunrise time or the sunset time. The other thing too is that when you consider that the twilight times before the sunrise and the twilight time after the sunset, those times actually belong to the day season. They're counted as part of the day. So you will never, ever have equal day and equal night according to what man wants to have. You will never, ever have that because of the twilights. And they differ. Everywhere in the world, they differ. At the equator, your twilight times are going to be really short, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. It's short. You get up to the poles, either direction, the twilights get very long. Even in the wintertime, and I don't live as far north as Alaska, but even in the wintertime where I live quite far north, we have a twilight of 45 to 50 minutes, even in the wintertime, in the morning and in the evening, 45 minutes where you could still be working outside even though the sun has set. So neither the internet understands that those twilight times actually belong to the day season. But that's what Yahuwah said. Evening and morning are part of the day. They have light in the sky that comes from the sun, even though the sun's below the horizon. Does that help a little bit?
Yes, a lot. And do we wait for the sky to get completely dark to say that, okay, then the day now has finished? Because, it starts from the east to getting dark, and then in the west, it's, you have the twilight, and it takes some time until this darkness reaches west. So that's when we say that the day ended, when even the western part of the sky is dark.
Well, now let's clarify. We're talking about the light season ended, but
the light season ended.
Yeah, but the 24-hour cycle does not end until you see that.
No. I'm talking about the light cycle. The light season of the day. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So, but now, if you remember, Tim brought up that quote about the equinox, and it is connected to paganism as well. So everything, just about everything in this world, the enemy has connected to paganism. He's tried to just paganize everything.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I had this brief thought. In some places in the scripture, it says that that his throne is in the north. So I imagine that in the north, what now we call as North Pole, anyway, the center of the Earth, if his throne is there, just in the center of our Earth, then 6 months of the year, then there it's always light, and then 6 months of the year it's almost dark. Is it not?
Yeah.
It kind of follows that pattern of light and night, just like a day does. Even the cycle of the year, there's a light portion and a night portion of the year.
Exactly, Kim. That's what I was, thinking, that if you are exactly in the center, like not a few degrees away, but exactly in the center, then you would have a year's day. a 24-hour period day. I mean, you would have a 6 months light season and then six months night. Anyway, maybe
Yeah.
I'm just thinking out loud. But that's interesting as a thought.
Beautiful patterns.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And also I had another thought. I had another thought about, because before I started reading the Bible or had anything to do with the scriptures, and I hadn't met you guys, and I was searching all sorts of different theories and conspiracies and stuff like that. So one of them was that we have no idea exactly where in time we are. That some people who are in charge, that they have changed our year, that we're not sure that we live in 2023, that maybe it's not, but they have added years there. And some people say that they have added 600 years, others say that they have added 800 years. I don't know whether you have ever heard this theory. I'm not saying it's true. Just have you heard about it?
Go ahead, Charlene.
Well, I just want to say this. We haven't gone into that area of study, but Yahuwah said basically that he would give 6,000 years for the sin problem to figure out if they had a better plan, basically. And that's 120 jubilees. And a jubilee is 50 years in every bundle. So just do the math. 120 times 50 equals 6,000. Usher's chronology, which everybody's quite familiar with. A lot of Bibles have dating in the margins, and Usher's chronology basically has creation at 4004 BC. But if you add,
is it correct? Do we know that this chronology is correct?
Just a second.
By historians, not by the Bible.
Yeah. So anyway, if you add 2,023 years to 4004, what are you at? You're already at 6,027 years, right? 6,027 years. Okay, so I just came across this the other day. I'm going, oh wait, we're already 27 years past the 6,000 years that's allotted. Now, we believe that Yahuwah knows no haste and no delay. Everything's right on time. He's got a time clock and it's keeping perfect time. So there's something wrong somewhere with the dating from Usher. And I just noticed here a couple of days ago, there's other people that have done a lot of work on the dating of the timelines in the scriptures. And Clausen is another one. Reese is another one. There's many of them. This is a lifelong work that they do. But Mr. Clausen, he likes to date creation at 5975. 5975. Now, if you do the math there, it's a little bit closer. Okay. I'm thinking myself that it should be 5970. Now, the reason that I'm saying that, and we don't have the studies to prove it, is just to think about. We're going to look at year 30, and then maybe your question would be better answered next time. But the year 30 has to have some kind of an impact on the Jubilees. If year 30, and I believe it is, we do, is the 80th Jubilee, then you have 40 more Jubilees to go until you finish your 6,000. So now you have to do the backwards math. We haven't done that work yet. It's a lot of work. But the cross, the crucifixion, that day, that Passover day, on that midst of the week, that is a center point for the whole universe and Yah's calendar. So there's some things to think about there. Do the math.
Yes, and yeah. And as I said yesterday, Daniel's prophecy should also work with Jubilees. That midst of the week should also be a prophetic timeline. So if we knew when we start counting the jubilees till the end, Yahusha's crucifixion should be exactly in the middle, or
Mhm.
from when we start counting the Daniel's prophecy. I mean, not from
Yeah.
the Garden of Eden. Yeah,
Mhm.
but also, Yahuwah is counting 360 days or 365 days now. Oh, it's a bit complicated.
Yeah.
Well, wait a second. Let's just make a distinction here. The festival calendar is 360 days, but the Shanae year right now is 365 and a quarter. Okay. But the festival calendar is not the one that counts out the Shanae years, right, Tim?
That's right.
That's probably the best way to say it.
Yeah.
So when the Shanae year changed with the day count with Hezekiah's sundial, it's still a Shanae year. It's still duplicating the way it's supposed to, but the 360-day calendar is not telling you that's the Shanae year. It's just the festal year. There's no more feasts and festivals that are prescribed in Leviticus 23 between day 360 and the first day. There's no festivals in there. You understand that?
Yeah, I understand that.
Mm.
Okay.
Those are good questions.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good questions with difficult answers, if
Well,
there
because
are answers.
yeah, most people don't even think about those questions, and then when they think about them, they don't know how to understand the answer. But the calendar has a lot of those answers in it, and lots of it's just common sense. But we're not taught these things to reason them out. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else anybody has to add?
Just waiting for Common Era 30. The details in there are astronomical. I tell you, I love it. Absolutely love that study.
Mhm.
It's coming.
We're waiting. All right.
It is detailed, though. It is detailed, and the reason it is because we have to be sure that everyone understands this count. And when we say we have to know how to count, we really are serious about that. And we don't want to offend anybody that they don't know how to count, but it is very serious. You have to know when is the last day of the year so that you can start counting your proper Passover count on the first day of the new month. If you get that mixed up by one day, your count's not going to be right. And it's easy to make a mix up. That's why what we just did on all these 8 years, looking at all of these years, it was a practice to learn how to count. You have to know. And all calendars, there's lots of different festival calendars out there. They all count different. So when you're comparing other calendars, you have to know how they're doing their count.
I think one of the reasons that Zadok and Enoch's calendars are very popular is that they require minimal counting because they have fixed dates. So it's very easy for anybody to follow them every year. They don't need to count.
Yes.
They,
And
they are mathematically magnificent, those calendars. They really are. They're simple, they're easy to follow, mathematically beautiful. The problem is, they're not scriptural.
yeah, and not only that, with the lunar calendars, there's no counting. They just watch for the sliver moon. They don't have to count out the year. They just watch for the sliver moon, and then they start their count that way. There's really not a lot of counting in a lunar calendar either, because it's all based on the moon. There's no 360-day count at all.
Yeah. All right. So I believe we can stop the recording.
Mhm.